Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today on unpacking perfectionism. And today we're really going to cover a lot of different topics under the umbrella of perfectionism, but we're going to be specifically focusing on how unrealistic expectations can lead to academic burnout. So, we broadly will be talking about perfectionism, ways that you can help your clients that are exhibiting some of the signs or tendencies of perfectionism, and then what to look out for and how to support clients that are showing up with some perfectionism tendencies. So, I want to introduce myself. My name is Megan Mitchell, and I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I work in Washington, D.C. So, a little bit about me so you know who is presenting to you today. Why I developed this training, I think it's much needed. I think that there are a lot of people who fall into the umbrella of a perfectionist, and oftentimes they feel alone or they feel misunderstood, or they silently are suffering through it and they're not getting the help that they need. So hopefully this will help you today be able to identify some of the tendencies, signs, symptoms, and be able to walk that journey with your client. So I am a self-proclaimed perfectionist, and for the last few years of my adult life, I have been working on this and through this. However, if you look back farther, the perfectionism tendencies really began probably in high school is when it started to become very clear to myself and to my family. So I will talk a lot today about my personal journey and how perfectionism has touched my life and continues to be part of my life and something that I have to continuously work on. I have been working as a clinical social worker, like I said, in Washington, D.C. since 2015. And I currently am a therapist with children and adolescents, primarily school age, so 5 to 18 ish, some variation in that as well. And I particularly work with children and their families who are neurodivergent. So that is something that is a big passion of mine. I am addicted to learning, I like to say, and you will see as I kind of explain my intro here, I'm a very busy person too. So I am currently working on my doctorate in social work at the University of Buffalo, and some of my interests there include technology and social work, burnout prevention, and I am recently studying expressive arts, and I'm working towards my play therapy certification. So I feel like I have so many interests, and I'm very lucky to have an outlet to be able to learn more. And why I always feel like I'm addicted to learning, I just am very curious, I'm very creative, so I'm always asking questions and wanting to know more. I have called DC home for the last 10 years, so it will be 10 years this upcoming spring. 2013 is when I moved here, but I originally and I grew up in Michigan, and big University of Michigan fan, went there for both my undergrad and graduate degrees. So if I have any fellow Wolverines here, go blue. Other things that I do in my time, I adjunct at the master's level. So I feel that education is something that's very important to me as well. And then I'm also the founder of a social work test prep platform, Agents of Change. So I have my hands in a little bit of everything. Most of my clinical social work was done in schools. So that's why this topic is very important to me, because I saw perfectionism and anxiety come up a lot. I just finished working in the schools after 8 years this January. So making kind of a switch into private practice because I just needed the flexibility, and I'm very busy, so I do that part-time. So that's a little bit about me. And what is our agenda for today? What are we going to cover? So I've already done my introduction. The next thing that we will cover is perfectionism, what it is and what it is not. Because people always ask me, well, why is perfectionism necessarily a bad thing? Shouldn't we be striving for high standards? Shouldn't we be pushing ourselves to be our best? We're going to talk about that fine line between perfectionism and high achieving. We will link perfectionism to academics, what kind of leads to some of those perfectionist tendencies in academics, how in an academic setting we can spot some of the signs and symptoms. We will move into coping strategies, moving from perfect to good enough. That is a big mindset shift that we will be focusing on with perfectionism. So not everything's going to be perfect because we know perfect is unattainable. So how can we move people with this mindset to think good enough is okay with me? And then we will wrap up and I will do some logistics at the end regarding CEUs. So who can benefit from this session? Really, anybody can benefit from this session. You might just have an interest in the topic or you're wanting to grow your skills in this area. But particularly who can benefit? Clinicians who work in an academic setting. So this could be if you work in a school setting, if you work at a university level, if you work in higher education, anywhere where you are interacting with learners. So that is one place that you might see clinicians working in academic settings. Clinicians who work with students. So this could be you're not necessarily in an academic setting, but maybe you're in private practice or you're in a community-based agency and you work with someone that is school-aged, right? They are, a lot of times they're students, or you might be working with adult learners or adult students. And then lastly, clinicians just wanting to deepen their understanding of perfectionism. Or some people take this topic or they're interested in this topic because they themselves might be battling some of these perfectionist tendencies and want some strategies to push forward and show some self-compassion. So whatever reason why you're here, welcome, and I'm excited to dive into this topic with you a little bit further today. Okay, here are our learning objectives. There are 5 of them. The first is to understand the concept and traits of perfectionism and its impact on academic and professional success. 2, recognize the signs and symptoms of academic burnout in clients. 3, learn strategies for addressing perfectionist thinking and unrealistic expectations in clients with a focus on moving from perfection to progress. So that's going to be an overarching theme today. How can we help our clients move from perfect to progress? So focusing more on the journey rather than the outward product that they deliver. The 4th is to develop skills for promoting healthy coping mechanisms and resilience. How can we teach our clients, work with our clients to develop these coping mechanisms, and how can we help them be more resilient? 5, examine the role of mental health providers in helping clients overcome perfectionism and preventing burnout, because burnout oftentimes parallels and works very close with perfectionism, and they oftentimes can be actually intertwined. So there's a lot of folks who experience burnout in regards to perfectionism. So what are some common traits of perfectionism? And this is not an exhaustive list. These are just some things that usually are kind of the common features of someone that has perfectionist traits. The first is fear of failure. So wanting to succeed at the highest level, right? And what they find is failure is not what everyone else would think is failure. Failure to them could be not being perfect, right? So failure of not being perfect, failure of letting themselves down, failure of letting others down. The second, this is a very common thinking pattern that people with perfectionism get into, and that's all or nothing thinking. So this is either I'm the best at something or I'm absolutely awful, I'm horrible at it. There's no in between, right? So they believe if I don't get 100% on something, or if I'm not the best at this, if I'm not number 1 in my class, then I'm an absolute failure, right? So it's that all or nothing thinking, very rigid thinking, and very little in between or middle ground there. The third trait is hyperfixation on mistakes. So ruminating and obsessing over mistakes. So they might get a paper back and they scored a 95 out of 100. And instead of being pleased with the 95% A grade, it's what happened? Why did I get those 5 points off? And then getting the feedback and not seeing the positive things that they were able to contribute to that paper or that assignment or that task, but really beating themselves over the mistakes that they made. The 4th is an intense sense of competitiveness. This is becoming more and more prevalent now that social media is a part of our teens and adolescents' lives, right? The the need to be the top of the class or the best athlete, this intense sense that I have to be number one, is definitely something that we see with those who have perfectionist tendencies. The fifth is excessive effort spent on a task. And we are not talking about putting a lot of effort forth on a task. We're talking about excessive amounts of time that go beyond what would be expected. So maybe they are studying for a test for hundreds of hours to ensure that they are going to be the best at it or get the best grade possible. And we'll talk about what that looks like a little bit more as we dive a little bit deeper.
Have you enjoyed this continuing education content so far? Agents of Change offers unlimited continuing education courses and continuing education credits for one affordable annual subscription. We add new courses each and every month, created by our team of experts, including compelling topics like unpacking perfectionism, risk and safety assessments, trauma and loss, and more. All Agents of Change content is presented through high-quality visuals, engaging video, and also includes downloadable audio for on-the-go listening. Learn more and get your first CEUs for free at agentsofchangetraining.com.